Welcome to virtual classes organized by Board of Studies, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for intermediate level paper 7B strategic management. I am Anand Saxena. I hope to take you through chapter 2 today as per the schedule, and we intend to wind up this chapter in the course of the 2.5 hours that are available with us. I hope all of you have received the chapter notes already. Let me see your questions and your responses, whether you have received the chapter 1 you have received. Have you all received chapter 2 notes or not? Good evening, Meghna. Good evening, Aditya, Harsh, Radha, Vijay Shankar, Bhargavi, Anshu. Please tell me whether you have received notes of chapter 2 as well. Before we start, I can't see your responses. Shall I refresh? Yes, you have received the notes of both chapters 1 and 2. That's very good. And I'm going to kind of revolve my presentation around the content that I have shared with you. As I said, these notes are illustrative. If I can make it, you can make these too. And when you do it with your own hands, that actually makes you sure about your learning and how you are going to cope with it in the examination. So as you can see that this chapter is about the dynamics of competitive strategy. And if you care to look at the left panel, on the northwest, you can see a military meeting in a military control room, wherein a map is being shown. So this captures the idea of kind of strategic mapping, wherein you look at where your competitors are and how you are going to position yourself with a view, as I have been repeatedly saying, with a view to outdoing your competitor, with a view to earning above average, results, and so on. So, and on the southwest panel, you see a cycle pedal, right? And where I have emphasized that strategic analysis involves both competitive analysis and competence analysis. So these two observations, primary observations, are kind of key to understanding this particular chapter, because as you can see on the right panel, the first thing that your chapter talks about is the landscaping, competitive landscape, right? And of course, the second part is strategic analysis. And as you can see that strategic analysis is a jewel of the competitive analysis and competence analysis. And of course, it has internal and external dimensions. And all this can be related to the fundamental definition of strategy that we did yesterday, wherein we said that a strategy is a plan that relates firms, a firm to its external environment. And when we look at the firm, we can look at the firm in terms of resources, in terms of capabilities, and we can look at the environment in terms of the challenges and the opportunities that it presents, before the firm. So the fundamental definition reverberates throughout your study material. And I have in the notes to chapter 2, I have designed a special table for you to highlight, for example, how this internal and external analysis, reverberates through your, for example, BCG matrix, your ANSOFS matrix, your ADL matrix, your SWOT analysis, and your TOWS analysis, and so on and so forth. So, therefore, as I have kind of drawn your attention yesterday also, this opening graphic of the chapter, along with the learning objectives, is key to developing our understanding of this subject matter. Carrying on from yesterday, there was a question I saw that requests me to. Bhargavi has asked, what is the difference between policy and a strategy? Bhargavi, as I said yesterday, that policy, especially we are talking about business policy. Policy in general tends to be an internal guide to decision making, and its orientation, inward orientation, is what it distinguishes from strategy, because strategy has got an external orientation. Strategy relates the firm to its environment. So that is the key difference. However, because you have asked this question, it also grants me an opportunity to take you through the journey of evolution of the idea of business policy, because, for example, in class 12, you have had marketing policy or credit policy, in either marketing or in finance. So the policy had a functional connotation, right? So when we look at the business in totality, it becomes business policy. Now, this idea of business policy emerges, in the context of the evolution of the discipline of management. Now, for example, if you are from commerce background, and if you have done some paper on management, you would see that scientific management was actually aimed at shop floor management at the factory level. And the principles of general administration, for example, that Frayol highlighted, were more and more towards general management. Anyways, the discipline of management can be divided into general management and functional management. So functional management, you have marketing management, finance management, HR management, personal management, or whatever. And general management is, the management at the top level. So business policy, falls within the realms of general management, and of course is the concern of the top level management. I hope I have clarified the evolution of business policy as a subject, and why we returned to the idea of business policy and general management. If you look at the typical evolution of a business from an entrepreneurial startup, an entrepreneur is a person who wears many hats. For example, when I take my sessions with entrepreneurs, I say that entrepreneur is the composer of the organizational orchestra. He is the music director, and he or she is the one-man band. So everything entrepreneur himself has been doing. But as the business grows, what happens is that he brings in specialists. So he brings in a marketing person, he brings in a finance person, and so on and so forth. So what happens is that in the process of growth, the whole is the sight of the whole is lost, and the sight is on the parts. The parts are production, marketing, finance. So there is a need to kind of emphasize the overall management of the enterprise, and that is where the issue of business policy kind of resurfaces. I would say resurfaces or emerges in the management lexicon. Now, from business policy to strategy is a transition especially triggered by competition. If you look at the evolution of large enterprises, especially post World War II, you know that America emerged as the supreme economic power in the world, and it is the American multinationals that dominated the world, and and of course, if at all they were competing, they were competing among themselves, right? Not much competition was there. But it is only subsequently, when multinationals from Japan, for example, started emerging, there was a threat, a serious threat to the American dominance. And then the idea of strategy and strategic thinking, started, kind of picking up, and, there was a shift from policy towards strategic management. Please type in yes in the answer in the question thing, so that I can be sure that I have been able to communicate, one, the difference between policy and strategy; number two, the evolution of business policy; and number three, the shift from the business policy towards strategic planning and then strategic management. Because this is a fundamental understanding, so I would like you to be sure of this. So please, type in yes to assure me that you have got the discussion so far. Okay. Yeah, of course, attempting the paper is a part and parcel of the discussion over here, and I have been saying this, and I will continue to emphasize how we may go about it. Anirudh, I think you don't have to mug up the things, as I have been repeatedly saying. But having said that, we must develop an articulation of expression. Now, that will come when there is an understanding of the subject, right? And how to develop understanding of the subject from the so many chapters and so much of content. As I said, the essence of strategic management is the link between the firm and its environment. Once this idea is kind of understood, I think the rest of the things start falling in place. So whatever you study it from the perspective of the firm and from the perspective of the business environment, and the things fall in place. I will explain you how it all happens. Okay, so I believe that the backlog, that means from yesterday, that was about clarity of concept of strategy and policy is resolved. Bhargavi has acknowledged it, so has Aditya, and therefore we have an opportunity to proceed further as far as chapter 2 is concerned. I will give you the crux of the matter of each chapter, and then that will help you kind of prepare well, and attempt the paper in your own creative manner, right? So that is it. Now, for example, your chapter is on the dynamics of the competitive strategy, right? This is the title of your chapter. If you have gone through the chapter carefully, you would have probably noticed that here, when we talk about the competition, I will place it here only. I am still on my first slide, as you can see. So when it talks about the competitive strategy, it is essentially talking about competition among the firms in the same industry. I will place it properly so that you can kind of see it. Okay, it was here. Here. So basically, it is talking about inter-firm rivalry, how the firms fight it out in the competitive landscape. For example, how Pepsi and Coca-Cola fight it out, right? How Amazon, fight out with others, right? How in the social media space, for example, Facebook fights out with others, right? So therefore, so the dynamics of competition, the competition here is essentially in the product market. The meaning of competition essentially in this chapter is in the product market. So, and inter-firm rivalry. The moment I say inter-firm rivalry, it is one of the elements of one of the forces which Michael Porter had identified for competition. There is a mention of Michael Porter in your chapter, and that is why if you look at the notes that I have sent to you, I have also put up an image of the Porter's 5 forces. Shall I bring it here for your immediate reference? Okay, I will do that. This is here. I will bring it in the next slide. I have to do the maneuvering here and here. Now, this is the figure that I have put explicitly in your notes, right? So, as far as this chapter is concerned, this chapter essentially focuses here. I will bring the thing here. So it brings it here. The focus of the chapter is here. But what I'm trying to say, that generally when I look at the industry structure, there are these 5 elements of competition. But as far as this chapter is concerned, its primary focus is on the industry competitors' inter-firm rivalry. And so this fact, if you keep in mind, your understanding will become very, very obvious and very, very clear. Why? For example, the moment I say that this chapter focuses on industry competitors and I want to look at my competitive landscape, I will have to see, suppose I am a potential entrant or even an existing player, I will have to see who all are my competitors, right? So I will try to look at those competitors. I would like to look at what are their, for example, comparative strengths and maybe comparative weaknesses. For example, whether they are providing a full line of product or they are only providing the introductory model and they are not providing what you call the high-end models of the product. So there is a gap and I can pitch that gap. So, the entire focus of this chapter is on this kind of, maneuvering. And for this, to highlight this competitive landscaping, I have given you another important figure, which I will bring to your consciousness on the screen also, and that is of the competitive landscaping, which I had asked in the form of a question at the end of the thing, end of the this. I am bringing here. Okay, here you are. I'll put in this slide. So I will do it live here for you. And as you can see, I am looking at the mobile handset industry, for example. And what I have done is that I have looked at my competitors, or I have plotted my competitors on the 2 dimensions, because there can be various strengths and various weaknesses of the competitors. How to reduce my rate of data into a 2-dimensional diagram, because 2-dimensional diagrams are easy to understand and kind of plot. So what I do is that on the x-axis I take the primary benefit. The benefit could be, for example, the memory, RAM, the camera, the sound quality, and so on. So I make an index of it, and I put the primary benefit and functionality on the x-axis, right? Sorry. On the y-axis, I take the price. So what I do is that I reduce the entire competitor analysis on 2-dimensional diagram, that is the price and primary benefit. And what I do is that I plot the various what you call combinations, because each dot is a coordinate of x and y axis, right? Each represents a particular firm. Then using the least square method or whatever, I put in a diagonal or put in a straight line, right? I'm sure you are little bit conversant with regression analysis. Please tell in your kind of question thing, so that I can see whether you are conversant. You are conversant with little bit of scatter diagram, little bit of regression analysis. Yeah, please tell me. Shall I refresh? Okay. No, I don't see any responses. Although Vaishnavi asks, the chapter is applicable to companies who's in services market. Why not? Strategy, we have already seen yesterday. It is applicable to product market. It is applicable to services market. It is applicable to the private sector, to the government sector, right? So, perfect. Okay. I will presume that you know a little bit of statistics. So, therefore, as you can see that I find the clusters here, and I segment these clusters into ultra low, basic, mid-range, super premium, and ultra premium. And then, because for example, if I am iPhone, I am not competing with some entry level manufacturers such as Micromax or something like that, is it not? So my competition will be with the high end products, maybe Samsung or something like that. So it is therefore very important to what you call paint. Landscape is an artistic expression, right? So you have to create a landscape, and you know that in the landscape you prepare the mountains and the skies and the stars and whatnot. So likewise, you have to paint the competitive landscape in terms of the different players and their special niches and strengths, and then you have to see with whom you are going to compete. right? So you have to, you have to pick up your competition. That is what is important. You are not going to compete with everybody and anybody. So that is what is important. And because you have to choose your competitors also depending upon your own strengths and weaknesses. I will not go and do a sumo wrestling straight away, right? So therefore, you have to pick up your competition, and that is where competitive landscaping, becomes very, very important. Related to this idea of competitive landscaping is the concept of strategic groups. That means industry comprises firms, but firms are not homogeneous. So firms can be clustered around certain characteristics. Now, for example, if you look at the banking sector, the strategic groups will comprise private sector banks and the public sector banks, right? Or maybe within the if you are not dichotomizing the industry in terms of the ownership pattern, the large private sector banks versus the public sector banks. So you can look at the likewise insurance sector, LIC and the other companies. So you can look at the strategic groups. Look for the strategic groups within the firm. What is the characteristic of a group? A group has relatively homogeneous elements within, but two groups are heterogeneous. So these are different. So two different groups, are characterized differently, but within the group. That means intergroup variation is high, but intragroup variation is low. So this is how you create the strategic groups, and then you look at where where you stand and where you would like to position yourself. Now, please tell me. I am very concerned about your understanding. Please tell me if you are able to understand the relationship between strategic mapping and the strategic group. I'll go back to your question portal and to see. Okay, Anirudh, as far as data about competition is concerned, if you wish to have ready to use data, there are portals that provide you with this kind of analysis. For example, I think IBF provides this kind of data. Otherwise, you can build your own data by looking at the published sources of information, and then kind of work upon this data to do charting and so on. And you can go to the websites of the different companies, look at their portfolios, product portfolios, and the performances, and then there are market watch, organizations that provide you comparative data about the performance of the firms. Even the stock market analysts, they do provide the comparative data of the firm. Thank you so much, Vasudha. Anirudh expects me to be explaining the transition from what you call mapping to the strategic group. Now, as I said, when I'm doing the competitive landscaping, I am looking at various competitors. And as I said, I am not competing with everybody. I am competing with a set of competitors. And I can, the moment I say so, if you have done marketing, it is a typical case of market segmentation. But of course, here we are not doing marketing, we are doing business. So I can call it business segmentation. And I am dividing the business into strategic groups. And the strategic groups, as I said, like any group, Vanshika, I cannot see your answers. So there must be some problem. But I have seen just your message now, so I could not see your answers, Vanshika. So I think yes, there is a glitch at your end. Yeah. So the point that I was making was that as it happens with any group, so there's a intra-group, homogeneity, and there's an intergroup variation. So in terms of variance analysis, if you've done variance analysis, so low intra-group variance and high intergroup variance. So a strategic group will, typically move together, move in sync as far as the strategy is concerned. So therefore, the concept of strategic groups becomes important, and therefore it is mentioned in your study material too. So although we have done price and benefit analysis, and we have looked at these two dimensions, the strategic groups can be variously configured. If, for example, if you look at the presentation, or in fact, even the notes, I have shown, I'll bring that here also so that you are clear about it. Yeah, if you look at the strategic groups in the pharmaceutical industry, I will bring it here. Yeah, so my presentation is being formed as I am interacting with you. Yeah, the pharmaceutical industry. So as you can see, instead of price and benefit, kind of scales, here what we have taken is R&D intensity and overseas focus. And we have plotted the firms along this. And as you can see that on the low overseas focus and low R&D intensity, there are 18 firms. And high overseas focus and high R&D intensity, there are 4 firms. And then there are middle range firms who are, moderately oriented towards exports and moderately oriented towards R&D, and there are outsourcers also. And as you can see, ROS, that is the return on sales, apparently appears to be highest among the emerging global firms, right? I have desisted from naming the companies, but then of course one can make out what those companies would be, right? So and then if we look at the strategic groups, and we can describe their characteristics, and we can say that the emerging global pharmaceutical, see, typically India's strength in the pharmaceutical industry has been, bulk production, right? Not the formulations, right? So formulations are from some overseas company, be it a British company or a European or a American company. And what we do is bulk drug manufacturing, right? So essentially it is an insourcing of production rather than original formulation. But of course, of late, pharmaceutical industry has been changing, and we find in-house R&D picking up in companies. And as you can see, the value distribution, is such that those who are into R&D are likely to return higher return on sales. So this is how the strategic mapping of the firm, group mapping of the firm is done. Kindly tell me if you are with me and you are getting the argument loud and clear. Vaishnavi asked me integral variation. Uh, Integral variation, by definition, should be the combined variation to my mind. I do not know what you are talking about, Vaishnavi. Or is it that you are talking about uh, vertical integration or horizontal integration or something like that? I do not know. Please be more elaborate as regards your question. Yeah. But as far as if the word is integral, then I would say combined variance, right? So combined variance will be intra-firm variance plus intergroup variance, right? It will be like that. That becomes the total variance. Huh? In sampling, what we do is we split the total variance between the variance between and variance among the samples, right? That's what we do in statistics. I hope I have been able to clarify this. Any responses? No, I can't see the responses. So, going back to the, I said the crux of the chapter is the rivalry among the firms, right, in the same industry. But as I said, not all firms are alike. Firms can be clustered, right? And this clustering can happen through the strategic mapping, right? So we can do, and then we can look at the strategic group to which we belong, and that is where we focus our entire kind of strategic planning. Okay, I am going to compete with Airtel is going to compete with Geo and Vodafone Idea, and so on and so forth, not with the rest of the companies, right? So, and as you are seeing that the whole idea of competition. Now, I let me get into a little bit of economics because you would have done some basic paper, foundational paper in economics also. The whole idea about competition is the market structure. Of course, we will be dealing with it when we take up further in detail. But you know that when there are large number of buyers and sellers and what you call the product is homogeneous and there is freedom of entry and freedom of exit, then it is a perfect competition. And in perfect competition, there is little room for strategic behavior because all the firms are making normal profit. And if at all in the short run, some firms are making supernormal profits or are incurring losses, that is due to their cost structure, right? So therefore, the opportunity for strategic behavior arises in imperfect market conditions, and that is where you have to look at pick up your rivals, and then you have to see. Now, for example, you realize that your rivals are thriving on cost leadership. They are selling at a low price, and that is how they are trying to create an entry barrier. Maybe you will have to innovate and differentiate your product so that you can beat them. Is it not? And many a times when you are entering a market which is already dominated, daunted by some dominating player. For example, if you look at the what you call personal hygiene or body care market, you know that the giants like Hindustan Liver are there, who have lots of brands, including Lux and Peers and Dove and so on. So, and you have to enter into this market. How would you do that? If you remember, and if you have watched the Sebamed advertisements, this is how, for example, they have tried to penetrate into the Indian bathing soap market by questioning the very basic, you know, legitimacy of these brands, because they are high on what you call alkaline content, is it not? So, and what they ask for the pH index, right? So that's how you have differentiated yourself, and you are trying to position yourself in a new market. Interestingly, this chapter actually, I speculate, is written by somebody who is expert in marketing management. So, therefore, there are a lot of examples and a lot of emphasis on interform, interbrand rivalry. And but as I said, when it comes to our strategic analysis, this is only a part of the story, not the whole of the story. Okay, let me see if there are any questions from anyone. How do you define healthy competition? It's a difficult question to answer, but one that is not founded on unfair practices. So the unfair practices are very well defined in law. And if you remember, even in the case of Sebamed, their advertisement was challenged on this ground by Hindustan Lever, that there is an unfair advertising, because they are in a way degrading our products rather than promoting their own products. Sebamed, of course, fought it out in the Supreme Court and appears to have won the case. A healthy competition is a competition based upon facts and comparison, especially if third-party comparison. Sebamed advertisement was based upon a third party, some research organization based what you call analysis, and that is why they could salvage their case in the highest court of the country. So a healthy competition will therefore be a fair competition. So fairness is a concept, and in fact, if you look at the Advertising Standards Council of India website, this fairness is one of their key value that they seek to promote as far as competitive advertising is concerned. I hope, Munsha, I have been able to address to your query. Pratham Kumar says strategic analysis depends upon analysis only of the environment. No, Pratham. As I said at the outset of my today's presentation, as you can see on the Southwest panel, strategic analysis is like a paddle. So you have to do competition analysis and you have to do your own competence analysis. So it is both looking inward as well as looking outwards. So this is what strategic analysis is. Okay, guys, let us therefore try and sum up our understanding so far. We talked about the crux of the chapter lying in competition among the firms in the same industry, and that necessitated competitive landscaping and also identification of the strategic groups, so that we may focus on the on our competition. What does the word dynamics mean? Dynamics mean that this is not going to be a static analysis at a point of time. Let us also therefore distinguish between here. Static versus dynamic. Static is a snapshot at a point of time, but you see competition evolves over a period of time. The laggards catch up, and they in fact overtake the leaders, or they pose a serious challenge to the leaders. So what is required is competitive intelligence, and you have to continuously keep analyzing your competition, and you have to develop that sense of predicting how the future is going to unfold, how your rivals are going to take up and emerge from. Just as you may not like to take it lying low, likewise your rivals may not like to take it lying low, and they will also be strategizing in terms of out maneuvering you and outdoing you on performance criteria. So therefore it becomes a dynamic game. It continuously changes, and therefore the pedal is very important. Either you are pedaling or you will fall aside. That's where I have used this metaphor of cycle pedal. No, so we are saddled so long we are pedaling, but if we stop pedaling, I guess we are in for trouble. So therefore, the dynamics imply that the nature of competition is changing. Huh? So you would have seen, for example, India featured nowhere when it comes to the manufacturing of the mobile handsets, right? And today we are doing fairly well as far as manufacturing of the mobile handsets is concerned. So in a way, Indian companies have started competing with the production companies elsewhere as far as the mobile handsets are concerned. So we have to keep it eye. Second thing about the dynamics of the competitive strategy, shall I create another slide for you and for better understanding? Just a minute. Dynamics of competitive strategy. Okay. Yeah, it's making. So the dynamism comes from the fact that the competitive landscape is changing. For example, as a result of an acquisition, a small firm may suddenly become a large firm, or two small firms may merge and they become a large firm. So hitherto you were fighting two individual small firms, and now you are facing a single large firm. So competitive landscape is changing, and also, as I said, just as the your competitors are also adding to their capabilities. Maybe they have gone for automation, they have gone for certain quality program wherein they have achieved a tremendous improvement in the product quality, and thereby they are posing a greater challenge to you. So your competitors are building to your capabilities. So at a point of time, they looked weak, but over a period of time, they have worked on their weaknesses and they have gained strength. So that is the meaning of competitive dynamism. Now, add to this, for example, the competitive behavior or the opportunistic behavior of the related firms. Now, for example, uh, uh, it may so happen that some firms may be planning integration. So that means your cloth supplier may also become a garment manufacturer through forward integration, is it not? So the competition may come from there. That the related firms, kind of integration, or they may also diversify. Now, for example, I am a software product firm, and I see the sudden shift to online teaching. I might diversify into educational services. So a company which is essentially a software company, such as say Infosys or Wipro for that matter, they may or TCS for that matter, they may diversify into educational services. And mind you, it is not that they have to build these services bottom up. They might acquire it from someone, and that's how. Or they may invest in the existing companies, acquire a controlling stake, and and so on and so forth. So therefore, the competition may come from virtually anywhere. Now, talking of pandemic only, who would be the primary, kind of prospects of introducing hand sanitizers? The primary prospects of hand sanitizers will be companies who are manufacturing soap, for example, Lifebuoy, or maybe such products, hygiene products as Dettol or Savlon, right? But you realize that certain paint companies, because the paint companies also make use of alcohol-based, kind of products. So they also jump into the fray and start manufacturing because the market is growing. They diversify into hand sanitizers, and they already have a good brand value and a brand presence. So what happens as a result is this, that the competition emerges from almost nowhere. If you may remember yesterday, I said that ultimately every industry is competing with every other industry for customers' money. So, for example, and this may be policy supported. If you look at government's announcement of LTC during the pandemic, they say because you cannot travel, what you do is that you may buy certain white goods, place the bill, and this will be considered as a leave encashment. Imagine tourism industry getting a competition from white goods industry or the appliances industry. So therefore, the dynamics of competition, the chapter title is Dynamics of Competition, is implied to suggest that competition is never stationary or never static. It keeps on changing, and therefore it is actually like riding a cycle. You have to keep your eyes and ears open, and you have to develop your own vision of shaping the competition. Remember the shaping strategies that we discussed the other day. Okay, let me see if there are any questions on the portal. Yeah, Shubrita, I said, the competition makes a bigger sense in the imperfect scenario, because perfect competition actually is no competition, is it not? Everybody is making a homogeneous product and taking normal profits. I'm very happy that you are following the discussion, because you would have realized that this discussion has gone beyond the text, and I have introduced the dynamic elements into the discussion. This shows that you have been keen learners, and thank you so much, all of you, for continuing to participate in the discussion so far. I think in a short while from now, we'll be moving to the next segment of the chapter, which focuses more on the strategy analysis. So, from the point of view of examination and otherwise, when we talk about the difference between competition analysis and strategy analysis, I hope you are clear that the emphasis of competitive analysis is on the product market, right? And the strategy analysis is a broader concept and includes competition not only in the product market but also in the factor market. And moreover, it includes an evaluation of the relative strengths of the firm as well. So once these concepts are clear, you actually play with the subject rather than mug it up. And so therefore, we are now poised to migrate to the larger issue of strategy analysis. Yeah, Mansha, you are right. The Sebamed advertisement. Yeah. So advertising, competitive advertising presents an interesting picture, and it gives you lots of stories about the things. And also, if you have been reading the newspaper, because we're talking about strategic mapping and so on and so forth, there's a Big Bazaar and there is Reliance Retail, right? And then Big Bazaar, sells off to Reliance, and then Amazon steps in and it takes it to the arbitration council in Singapore, and then Singapore arbitration award is further challenged in the Supreme Court, and the Amazon has its way. Now, Amazon is an online retailer, and Reliance is a offline retailer, and so is Big Bazaar. Then, what is the dynamics of this kind of a competitive behavior? And you see here, the firm is trying to influence the environment and challenge the sale out of Big Bazaar to Reliance, because you know that ultimately you need logistic support, and you need warehouses to put your goods, and ultimately, anyways, the e-commerce companies are competing with these organized large retailers too. So competition comes from nowhere. Ayush asked me what is the dynamics in integration. Now, the dynamics in integration is that previously, you are a garment, garment brand, for example, and you would not consider a fabric manufacturer as your competitor, right? Is a remotely only can be regarded as your competitor. But if he forward integrates into garment manufacturing and branding, then it becomes that competition. And the dynamic is that the nature of competition has changed because somebody has got forward integrated. That's the point that I was trying to make. Any questions? I think 7 o'clock now. It's the right time to take a pause for about 7 to 10 minutes. Before we come back on the next segment of strategy analysis, until then, you can go through your notes, and you can also mull over whatever discussion has occurred so far. And then if there are any queries or questions, you can put these questions Okay, Akanksha says, I go a bit slow. Okay, Akanksha, I will try to be slower in my speech. Yeah. So we are stopping here. Vijay ji, can we take a break here, please? Hello, Vijay ji, can we take a break here? Okay. Uh, right. Future receiving Aditi Tiwari. I am not able to see your queries. I have just seen your message. Yes. Any queries? Please put up. Aditi, you said something. Why only few firms? There was a query from you. Just a minute. Just a minute. Aditi Tiwari asked how to attempt this paper. This is what I kind of explained. I will explain once again. Then Aditi Tiwari asks, strategic map, yes, represents high strategic goal. It's not a query, it's an observation. Then Aditi Tiwari says, why only few firms dominate the environment even though their competitors follow same principles? Yeah, as you would have seen, Aditi, the greatest thing is brand equity. How you build your brand equity. You see, technologically, most products are same these days. Be it laptop, be it mobile handsets, and so on. Technologically, products are more or less same. It is a careful, kind of crafting of your brand equity that the firms create their distinctiveness in the minds of the customers. Is it not? So therefore, we need to kind of. Then Aditi, yeah. So I hope your queries are taken care of, and we are now ready to move. You have to excuse me for a minute because there is some issue. Welcome back. So now from the competitive analysis to the strategic analysis, and as you can see right from my first slide, it's a dual exercise in competitive analysis and competence analysis. Then your subject or your text takes a departure and then highlights value chain as a probable tool of your internal analysis, whereby you can see what are your distinct competencies in this regard. And of course, it brings into discussion the idea of core competence. So I am going to devote next maybe 15 to 20 minutes on the idea of core competence and your competitive analysis. And your notes, the figure that I have especially designed for your handouts is a good infographic to fall back upon. And what I will do is that I will bring that infographic right on my slide here by copying and pasting. Just a minute. So that we are doing it live here. Okay, here. If I can post it, just a second. It becomes big. Yeah, it becomes big. And as you can see, I define competence as a combo. Competence. I define competence as a combo of cash. And this is applicable not only in the context of corporations, but also in the individual. So a competent individual has a right mix of What does CASH stand for? Knowledge. So you know your business thoroughly well, inside out. Attitude. Attitude of persistence, for example. Never say die, right? Skills. And also habits. You know, somebody has said, sow the seeds of thought, reap the harvest of words. Sow the seeds of words, reap the harvest of deeds, actions. Sow the seeds of actions, reap the harvest of habits. Sow the seeds of habits, reap the harvest of character. And sow the seeds of character, reap the harvest of success. So we need to be successful, and therefore corporations and individuals have to strengthen their cash. CA asset cash is only one of the aspects, right? It is the knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits that will take you places, that will take the companies places. And you would have seen that certain companies really specialize in their area of expertise, and therefore derive their core competence there. So the competence lies not only in terms of the resources that you have, but the manner in which you utilize these resources. So it is not the resource per se, not the resource per se, but the ability to utilize the resource that determines one's competence, right? And this competence leads to competitive advantage, and it earns you a superior performance. So now Apple, for example, has got fantastic design capabilities, right? And a superior what you call operating system, and has got a fantastic team in research and development, and it put together all these capabilities in turning out superlative products in the market that enable it to earn supernormal profits and superior performance, right? So everybody has resources, every firm has resources, maybe similar resources, because it is said that resources can be imitated. If you have bought the latest CNC machine, computerized, numerically controlled, for example, lathe, I can also buy that, is it not? If you have purchased a good book, latest book on strategic management, I can also buy that book, is it not? But how I put that book to use, what inferences I am able to draw, what knowledge I am able to draw from it, that is my unique competence, is it not? So not every competence will derive competitive advantage. It is certain characteristics in that competence that will derive competitive advantage for you. And there are 4 characteristics of the competencies which are there mentioned in your book. Your books occupy so much space elaborating it. I have put together in only in one figure. That one, it has to be valuable. That means it must add value to the to whatever I am doing, right? And a thing becomes valuable, for example, when it can be put to diverse uses. It is not specialist; it is a generalized, kind of a capability. So valuable. Second, it has to be rare. For example, you will see about experience curve. The experienced workforce becomes a formidable competitive advantage because others will take a lot of time in catching up with the experience, for example, of the faculty or of your research and development team and so on and so forth, and even in your sales and marketing personnel who have been into the nooks and corners of the market and they know it inside out. Is it not? Non substitutable. As I said, if I can be substituted easily, then I have no competitive advantage vis-a-vis the substitutes that are available. And non-imitable. It should not be copyable. I should not be able to copy it. I can copy the machine, I can copy the technology, but I cannot copy the wisdom that is put to use in utilizing the technology for solving the problems of the firm, for example. So the competence analysis, as a part of strategic analysis, looks at firms' resources and capabilities and examines whether these are valuable, rare, non-substitutable, and non-imitable, so that they can be combined in a way to yield competitive advantage and thereby a superior performance of the firm. So one reason why certain firms tend to dominate, I am reiterating a question that came up on the class group, on the question group, is that certain firms have a unique ability. Some people call it managerial ability, for example, men, money, machine, material, methods, and management. So superior management of the resources, for example, becomes a distinguishing factor of success in the firms in the same industry. So the competence analysis will comprise that. Now, what are the areas of competence that we should be exploring and we should be looking at? Before I move to that, let me see if there are any questions. Okay, Akanksha asked me, how is strategic management important for a chartered accountant, especially? You see, if you name the top accounting firms, they are actually bulk of their business is coming from consulting, right? Even to the extent of more than half of their business is coming from business consulting. So papers like strategic management are supposed to provide you with that business orientation, so that you may diversify from audit function to consultancy function, where you can look at the problems which the firm is facing and enable them to overcome these through making effective choices. And I would agree with Mansha the fact that the cash, the KASH, is continually relevant and continually important, even in the post-pandemic and the post-COVID scenario. I put even more value on if you look at this particular aspect of knowledge, because I put knowledge somewhere in between data and then information. Data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and even above it, let me just, because I have diversified into it, then let me complete this for your reference. You will find it useful. Okay. This is called knowledge hierarchy: data, information, knowledge, wisdom, DIKW. And I place values even above this, right? For example, in the COVID scenario, if there's a choice between life and livelihood, I guess life has to matter the most. Some companies have really done very well on this count. I was talking to Berger Paints managing director. They ensured that nobody is laid off during the COVID, and everybody got their increments and promotions on time. Even so much so that they honored their internship commitments. So you see that you have to really, stand by your values. It is one thing to say that human resources are the most important, but if you dispense with them at the first instance in the wake of pandemic and so on, then I think it doesn't speak well of the company values, right? So company values are some fancy words, but these are not practiced. So the strategic value of the firm comes also from not the resources but the values, right? Because the values will determine how effectively and where these resources will be deployed and devoted at a particular point of time. Because performance is always over a period of time, right? So if you invest in your people today, preserve your people today, even by drawing down on your reserves, they will more than compensate, and they will rebuild those reserves in the years to come, in the times to come. However, leaving aside this observation and continuing with our discussion of the strategy analysis as the twin pedal of competence analysis and what you call the environmental analysis. Next stage or next phase in our discussion will be what are the areas of building these competence, right? So that's what I'm moving to, and that's where your study material brings into discussion the concept of value chain. And let me see if I have this value chain here. Yeah, I have value chain here. And as I said, your study material, positions this concept of value chain as a means of competence analysis. Money. You may have great infrastructure, and great firm infrastructure may become a leverage. For example, you know that Videocon has been producing electrical appliances and even televisions and so on for various brands, because you have got a fantastic infrastructure. And this infrastructure, besides meeting your own needs, because Videocon also has a brand of its own, brand presence of its own. So besides meeting your own opportunity, the slack can be utilized for utilizing it even more fully, and thereby generating greater revenue by insourcing production from you. The value chain idea is very important. Actually, it is nothing but a typical flattening of the elements of a firm: production, marketing, finance, HR, right? So every firm has all these functionalities. So once I open up these functionalities into the form of into the form of a value chain, now it yields me interesting insights. You look at the right panel. Right panel shows the margin. So what does thinking strategically mean? Thinking strategically means what is the contribution of my firm infrastructure to my margins? What is the contribution of my HR to my margin? What is the contribution of my technology and R&D to my margins? What is the contribution of my procurement to the margins? What is the contribution of my inbound logistics, that is supply chain management? And what is the contribution of my operations to the margin, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, service, and so on and so forth. So, it the value of a tool, this is a tool, value chain analysis, lies in what I refer to as what I call as interpretive extrapolations. So how I can interpret this supply chain? So I have to ask, what is my core competence? Is it my distribution? For example, Hindustan Lever has got a fantastic competence in terms of distribution. Or is it my supply chain? Companies like Amazon, etc., they have got fantastic capability of their supply chain. Is it technology? So certain companies have got superior competence in terms of the technology, right? So you have to identify the area of your competence, right? The branding itself is a competence. It's a marketing competence that you can your brand is strong, and therefore you can leverage that brand to introduce new products, even unrelated products, for example, right? So therefore, so moving from what a competence is, right, and how that competence becomes critical for competitive advantage by endowing it with that 4 criteria: valuable, rare, non-imitable, and non-substitutable. So moving from what a competence is to the specific area where my competence may lie, then I have to play on my strength. You see, everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. Of course, we need to work upon our weaknesses, but I think more than that, we also need to leverage our strengths. Is it not? We have to play to our strengths, right? In the competitive context. So therefore, the whole idea. For example, if your services are very good, you look at these. What is that? Airlines that had fantastic customer services, and then they launched this service itself as a business. So most BPOs, so-called BPOs, were the captive units of their original firm. GE, for example, the BPO was the in-house, the captive firm of the GE group of companies. But then this business flourished so much that they started getting business from other companies also, right? So therefore, you have to identify what is your core competence, and then have to play around that core competence to gain strategic advantage. Many times other companies will seek partnership with you because of your advantage. So if your logistics is strong, so maybe some new brand or some product may like to associate with you so that they can penetrate into the inner markets of the territory that they wish to kind of explore. And that's why you would have seen that the foreign venture strategies, because globalization is also a part of this chapter, that the firms aspiring to globalize, they look for their joint venture partners, because the local partners are well versed with the local markets. They have already, a well-entrenched logistics system there. So what you wish to do is to piggy ride, their logistics support to ensure your presence in a particular country. So value chain analysis, we will see this value chain analysis can be used very differently, in other settings also. But at the moment, because my objective here is the strategic analysis, a value chain provides me an opportunity to look at my relative strengths and weaknesses, so that I may try to aspire to gain competitive advantage. Having done so, because I have spent, I think, about 15 minutes on this idea of value chain, let me see if there are any questions. The question Mansha asked about strategic thinking and planning. Planning goes beyond thinking, right? Because it goes about exploring the alternatives, evaluating the alternatives, and arriving at decisions, right? So thinking and deciding, that is the difference. So planning is a bridge between thinking and deciding. So strategic decisions are important. So I hope it is clear. Value chain analysis is used to analyze internal firm activities. Subrata, you are spot on. You see, two or more companies, Aditi, can have similar core competence. Is it not? It is possible. So if you say Ola and Uber have the similar core competence, it is okay. I mean, to say, how does it matter, right? So perfectly fine. But in terms of the service experience, for example, you would have noticed that, for example, Ola necessitates telling of code at the time of boarding and deboarding the cab, whereas Uber software is more interactive, wherein you don't have to tell the code to the Uber drivers, right? So the Uber, therefore, artificial intelligence system seems to be better. And mind you, Uber is a much older and senior player in this car renting business, right? Than Ola. So they have a greater brand equity than Ola, of course. Any other questions? Let me refresh it to assure myself. Last was 67. No. So I hope I have kind of clarified also the difference between strategic thinking and strategic planning, wherein I have emphasized the fact that strategic planning moves beyond contemplation to generation of alternatives, evaluation of alternatives, and making a strategic choice, or what you call formulating a strategy. So that is what the difference between the two is and could be. Okay. Now, so we have done the value chain as a tool of assessing the competence and the competence analysis. Now, having done this competence analysis, the time is, and also looked at competitive landscape. I think it's the time now to combine the two. What is that? The competence analysis and the competition analysis, and to move towards formulation of strategy. And that is where I think you will find the table that I have given you in the notes. You will find it very, very useful. And I will bring that table here for your ready reference from the notes. I'll put it here only. Okay, here it comes. I will enhance the font size for your benefit. Let me see. Okay, perfect. Otherwise it will take so many pages for you to read each and everything, right? In a way, the strategic analysis, as we have already said, comprises a constitution of both internal factors and external factors, and the various models and techniques that are mentioned in your chapter uh, vary only to the extent of their definition of internal factors and external factors. For example, the BCG matrix uses market share and market growth, and SOPS matrix uses products and markets. ADL matrix uses competitive position and industry maturity. GE matrix uses business strength and market attractiveness. SWOT includes strengths and weaknesses and environmental opportunities and threats, and TAOS includes this. So in a way, this table gives you a nutshell idea about the various techniques of strategic analysis, and strategic analysis by definition involves internal and external factors. This goes back to the very definition of strategy, which relates a firm's internal factors with its external environment. So I hope the concept is clear to you. And of course, we will be taking up these matrices, and each of these matrices is there in your study material, and we will see how these matrices are used for the strategy analysis, and maybe a pointer towards the strategy that a firm should follow. So, and I will be devoting, I think, a rest of the time of this session on these techniques only. Your study material talks about two or three basic concepts that you need to be aware of before you embark upon these techniques. And I think rightly they have done so. And I will also kind of bring those ideas to the fore before we actually take up these techniques. Yeah. So, where are we? We are in the notes, and the notes have, yeah. If you look at section 2.7 of your study material, and I have mentioned in the notes also, I'll go back to the slide and I'll bring it here. And I will enhance the font size. The chapter says that before you are able to understand the various techniques of the internal and external analysis, You must be aware of these three concepts: SBU, experience curve, and PLC. Strategic business units we defined uh, in chapter 1, right? And we saw that especially for a multi-business corporation, uh, a strategic business unit is an independent investment center. Remember, I drew the analogy from the responsibility accounting, and it is an independent investment center where the SBU head or SBU chief takes all the proprietary decisions, including what products to manufacture, what products to add, how to market these, and so on and so forth, besides raising the finances and so on. So the analysis that we are doing here is particularly focused on a particular business unit, right? Of course, there can be a corporation which is a single business unit, fine, that's okay. But here our analysis is confined to a single business. And therefore, the entire strategic mapping is for a particular business. And a business belongs to a particular industry. And that is why industry analysis becomes a unit of analysis. I hope the point is clear as far as SPU is concerned. Now, what does the word experience curve mean? Have you heard of this concept of experience curve? Please tell me. In your class 12? Have you heard of the concept of experience curve? Please tell me. Aditi Tiwari asked about managing linkages. Where does this phrase come from? Please elaborate, then only I will be able to explain. Yeah, Shubhata, you're clear. You're right that how a particular firm may follow a cost leadership strategy. That's okay. Yeah, kindly tell me, because then I might like to spend some time on experience curve. No? Have you read this experience curve in your economics, class 12 economics maybe? It is similar to learning curve. Yeah, if I were to link it with your class 12 economics, recall the inverse J, long run average cost curve. It was also called learning curve or experience curve because as you specialize, as you do more of the same, you specialize in it and tend to do it at a lower cost, right? So and this gives you a competitive advantage, especially in your cost leadership and even in differentiation, because you know that how to tweak the product here and there and kind of bring about an innovation. Yes, Ram Kumar, you are spot on that it is a learning curve based thing. So good that you are already conversant with it and you know how it benefits. It benefits the firm in terms of the competitive advantage. You have to forgive me as I sip my cheek up because my throat is now giving way. Okay. Now, and PLC, again, you would be aware of product life cycle. Now, it's a simple concept, but again, it can be elaborated manifold for the competitive analysis of the firm. Uh, the firm product life cycle, comprises various stages, and the concept is also applicable to the industry because the product may be new to the industry, it may be at the introduction stage. Then there are few takers of the product, and then you have to, uh, you know, devise your marketing strategy accordingly. And when the greater acceptance happens and a product is growing, the more player comes in, and your competition intensifies, and then you have to negotiate with those challenges. The dynamics, because we are doing dynamics of the competitive strategy, is that through a process of continuous innovation, what you can do is that you can continually throw up newer products or the newer versions of the older product. Of late you would have seen Apple, especially as their phones, they have been coming up with the new models, fairly fast, right? And so before the older model has, even fully matured, the market for the older model has fully matured. They have come out with a new model. And of course, there are different countries and the different markets are in the different stages of evolution. Idea is how to be always in the growth stage, is it not? For a company, it will be beneficial always to be in the growth stage because that is where your business is growing, your revenue is growing, is it not? And strategically, therefore, what you do is that either you do continuous product innovation, or what you do is you do market diversification. ANSOP's ideas, but then I will come to ANSOP's matrix later, but I hope I am making sense in the fact that in a particular location, my product may have reached the maturity stage. But what I may do is that I may introduce it in another country where it might be at the introduction stage. For example, with respect to technology products, multinational companies, for example, have been accused of dumping their older technology, older products into the developing countries as new products. Is it not? So the idea is therefore always to be in the growth trajectories and at the faster growth stage of the product life cycle. Shall I show product life cycle? It is there, I think, in your textbook. Yeah, it is here. So how I always be in a growth kind of a trajectory, because that is where your sales are rapidly galloping, is it not? So what you can do is that you can play with the product life cycle in a dynamic manner, and either through introduction of the new products in the same market, or by diversifying the market that is introducing the same product in the new markets, you can continually hope to be in the growth trajectories of the product life cycle, right? So therefore, these three concepts, which your paper says, are key to the understanding of the techniques of strategy analysis that are there in your study material. Let me see if I can take you to the site of BCG and do a live video of BCG matrix. I will be stopping to share here, and I will be sharing just a minute. That means I missed out somewhere. Let me see. Okay. Can we go? Google. Google Jana. I want to go to Google thing from here. Google Chrome tak ja raha hu, but it is showing the admin panel. But where will it show me the video that I wish to play? why is it not showing, the share option is not showing me the tab. The tab is already open. देखता हूँ शेयर में क्या कह रहे हैं। शेयर में क्या आया अब, अभी तो अभी तो मेरा स्लाइड शो ही आ गया ना। ये मुझको ये नहीं दिखाना ना, मुझको दिखाना है शेयर स्क्रीन में। मेरा क्रोम क्यों नहीं दिखा रहा है ये? आई थिंक ये ओके, अब आ जाना चाहिए। मुझे साउंड बता दीजिएगा कि आ रहा है या नहीं आ रहा है।
In the 70s and 80s, about half the Fortune 500 used the BCG growth share matrix to decide where to invest. The matrix was based on two principles. High relative market share businesses or products typically yielded superior returns, and high growth rates indicated markets where leadership should be built. Plotting growth rates against market share relative to competitors yielded the four quadrants of the growth share matrix. Cash cows with high share but low growth, which were milked to reinvest in high share before divesting. Select rigorously. Leverage all available data when scaling up or divesting. Measure and manage experimentation, speed, cost, risk, and return. What Bruce Henderson wrote years ago still...
Now, this is an important video on the Boston Consultancy Group, and it gives you lots of perspectives other than the stationary
in the 70s and 80s, about half the Fortune...
Already seen. I will be stopping. Yeah. Oh, अच्छा, okay, कोई बात नहीं, बात सकते हैं इसको। कहाँ चला गया अब ये? So I am playing the video again, please, for your.
In the 70s and 80s, about half the Fortune 500 used the BCG growth share matrix to decide where to invest. The matrix was based on two principles. High relative market share businesses or products typically yielded superior returns, and high growth rates indicated markets where leadership should be built. Plotting growth rates against market share relative to competitors yielded the four quadrants of the share matrix. Cash cows with high share but low growth.
The questions I mean to say. Okay, and linking it with our the precursor concepts of PLC. The product life cycle, has undergone a drastic kind of a reduction. For example, Sony's Walkman took about 45 years to reach, the maturity stage. The internet has taken just about 5 years to reach the maturity stage. The telephones have mobile telephony has used less than 5 years to reach that maturity stage. Vanshika is saying video is buffering a lot. Is it true, Vijayji? But that could be at your end, Vanshika, because the bandwidth at the recipient's end is also a factor in the showing of the videos. I think the essential idea of the video is the movement, rapid movement, across the quadrants, and the company, in order to remain sustainably competitive, has to ensure that it is continuously investing in the question marks. The futuristic projects, for example, electric cars, electric vehicles, especially when you know that the government is subsidizing and laying a lot of emphasis on electric vehicles. So you have to invest in those technologies that will enable you to build those kind of competencies. So, a very important lesson from the portfolio analysis that comes from the video is portfolio rebalancing. At a rapid pace. A kind of an active strategy. If I were to use the word from stock market, you don't have to be a passive, player holding on to your dogs and cash cows. You must be actively changing your portfolio so as to enhance your portfolio return. So that is the kind of learning from BCT matrix, and in general any portfolio analysis. Vanshika and Radha, what I will do is I will probably share the link to the video with the institute, and then I cannot type in here, otherwise I would have typed it here. The link to the video. Yeah, anyways, you can go to bcg.com and look at their videos. They comprise a huge learning as far as the students of strategic management are concerned. Moving on from the BCG matrix, which is somewhere here, is it? No. It is. BCG matrix is here. All right. Don't be fooled by the direction, because the original matrix that we saw, low was on the right and high was on the, so that the quadrants shifted. So the logic has to be kept in mind. So idea is that we need to constantly invest in our question marks and stars to be enhancing our return on portfolio, and rebalancing will always be necessary. We need not be very possessive about the dogs that we have, and at times emotional reasons for holding on to a particular asset or a particular business can be detrimental to the stakeholders. So, and we should use our cash cows. For example, Tata company use this cash cow, Tata Steels, to invest in Tata consultancy services, right? So this is what we need to continually do and see what works best for us. So it is an art. Portfolio management, and rebalancing is an art. There are various techniques of portfolio rebalancing. But again, I would still put my money on Markowitz portfolio analysis, wherein you do one-to-one comparison between business segments and see which one is preferable over the other and by how much, and accordingly you take your decision. So that is it. Now, as subs matrix, as far as this is concerned, this and subs matrix is of course used both for market entry as well as growth. And I have already talked about product development and market penetration, kind of dimensions, and how the company, for example, may like to remain in the growth trajectory of the product life cycle, either by constantly introducing the new products or exploring the new markets. And if we can do simultaneously both the new products as well as new markets, wonderful, diversification. So, however, answer growth matrix is used more for entry strategies, because at times if you are entering an established market, then you have to follow a kind of a penetrative strategy. Sivamed follow a penetrative strategy on account of superior quality At times, Geo followed the policy of price advantage, and it disrupted the entire market of mobile telephony. Uh, so penetration doesn't necessarily happen through price only. It can also happen through fantastic differentiation, as you can see in the case of Cibamed, right? And of course, market development I have already elaborated. So NSOP's growth matrix is likely, uh, kind of is more used for market and determining the market entry strategy. Now that takes us to another point. Whenever we look at strategic management, like the game of chess, opening game, middle game, and the end game. Likewise, my what you call introductory strategy, market entry strategy, growth strategies, and then what you call retrenchment and diversification strategies. I can look at my strategy management along the life cycle of the corporation. So much so. I have attempted a more elaborate concept of ANSOP's growth matrix, but doesn't really matter whether you are using 2x2 or 3x3 matrix. The essential idea is the same as far as ANSOP goes, and I think the differences between the matrices are important because ADL, for example, explicitly brings into discussion the concept of product life cycle. That is why PLC was mentioned as the basic building block of understanding of strategy analysis. And if you can see, this is the class. This is the figure from your study material. As you can see that the ADL matrix looks at the product life cycle from embryonic, growth, mature, and aging, perspective, and then looks at the competitive position of the firm along the other dimensions: dominant, strong, favorable, tenable, and weak. So what is it trying to say? That look, if the industry is in the embryonic state and your competitive position is weak, become a niche player. Rather than capturing the entire market, just cater a small segment of that market. Go back to that STP framework that I talked about: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And as you build up, your cash reserves and so on, then you can start catering to the other segments also. So maybe initially you cater to the premium segment, and then gradually move to the other segments to generate more volume for you. And so initially you may be into a la carte menu, and then you may go into standardized menu for scaling up your restaurant businesses. That is what this ADL matrix tells. So so different matrices have got their comparative utility in terms of enabling and understanding of the strategy analysis. And each matrix uses, of course, the environmental factors as well as the firm-specific factors when it comes to pointing towards the strategy. No, it is not giving you specific strategies, but it is pointing towards your strategies. For example, when you are strong, your competitive position is strong, and market is in embryonic or growth stage, then you can focus on differentiation, product differentiation, right? And then you try to act as big brother and eat up the small firms, and so as to annihilate the competition, right? But of course, towards the later stages, you might go for lower cost alternatives, and later on cash coin and harvesting the businesses. So So if you have understood the product life cycle well, you will be able to understand strategic analysis well, by integrating it um, as uh, uh, as an aspect of the environment, and then looking at your relative position, which may vary from weak to dominant. So, so much so about uh, the GE matrix also, does more or less the same, and then it says that when your business unit strength is weak vis-a-vis the industry, attractiveness, either you might like to harvest or you might like to divest. Uh, if you are somewhere in between the diagonal, as you can see, you have to selectively hold your business portfolios. And the greener ones, it is also called a traffic light, matrix, which allows you to, kind of immediately see red areas where you have to pause and reflect and take a decision whether to continue or to discontinue a particular product line. Amber is about being watchful, and green is for go. So it is a traffic light kind of analysis. I have described briefly all the matrices, and more importantly, I have given you this table of study material. Where am I? This table. No, not this table. Is it? Yeah. This table to highlight the fact that whatever be the matrix that we are using, we have to reckon the internal factors and the external factors. This chapter is somewhat complex because the last two, SWOT and TOWS, actually, these matrices take the discussion from SBU level to the corporate level. So, in a way, corporate level strategy formulation, the entire discussion moves. So far, our discussion was confined to the specific businesses and the industries to which those businesses belong. But SWOT and TOWS are more generic, kind of frameworks for strategy formulation and strategy evaluation. And we will be discussing these more when we take up the corporate level strategy making. However, I will definitely make a reference to the two, and especially the difference between SWOT and TOWS. You see, both are using the same terminology: firms, strengths and weaknesses, environmental opportunities and threats. Just to clarify you even further, both the techniques involve strategic advantage profiling and ETOP, environmental threats and opportunity profiling. Sorry. So where am I? I will bold this. So these are separately created profiles, but these are now put together in the form of a matrix. So on the x-axis, you take strengths and weaknesses of the firm, and on the y-axis, you take opportunities and threats coming from the environment. Common. Essential difference between SWOT and TOWS is that the TOWS matrix gives you the strategy. If you have done linear programming, especially, then you would know this. It gives you the principles of strategy formulation. TOWS matrix gives you the principles of strategy formulation. What are those? Shall we come to the... Have I not covered here? Just a minute, just a minute. I think we are here. Yes. So what I have done is that I have taken the figure from your study material, and I have written the principles SOWO, sorry, maxi maxi, mini maxi, maxi mini, mini. So it says that if environment is full of opportunities and you are operating from a position of strength, you try to follow a strategy that will maximize the maximum profits. But on the other hand, environment is full of opportunities, but you are operating from a weak position, then try to minimize the maximum loss. Gradually build your resilience and then try to move towards SO. Now, again, it is a dynamic. Now, I am looking at the matrix in a static sense. It's a two-dimensional matrix, but I can generate dynamism within this matrix also. That's a point that you must, kind of take home. And if there is an environmental threat, maybe a sudden change in the pollution laws, but you have a financial muscle, try to maximize the minimum profit, because a new legislation will definitely impose the cost. So you have to adjust your aspiration and then gradually scale up to diffuse the fixed cost over the larger units, and thereby kind of generate a higher rate of return. So TOWs and SWOT both follow the same variables on internal elements and external elements. The difference between TOWs and SWOT lies in categoric specification of the principles governing strategic choices. So I hope this point is clear. I am nearing the closure of this session. Let me see if there are any questions. Slide is not visible. Rather, I think already elaborated that TOWs is superior to SWOT in as much as it gives you the explicit principles of corporate governance. Strategy formulation, right? Okay, so Aditi Tiwari asked me to give you a hint or the questions of case scenarios, and can come from different matrices. These can come variously. For example, you may be given the market share and the growth rate of the industry, and then you may be asked to put the different products or different businesses into categories: star categories, top categories, and cash cow categories. So, like in basket exercise, right? So, I will give you the relative market shares and the industry growth, and then I will say put these businesses into the four quadrants of the BCG matrix. So I hope it's clear. TOWs and SWOT I have clarified already. Vijay Shankar says TOWs is the reversal spelling of SWOT. Yeah, as I said, in terms of the basic variables, but the essential difference is in terms of categoric mention of the principles of strategy formulation: max, min, min, max, min, min, max, max. Right. So this is what you need to kind of. Okay, any other questions? Let me just update it once more before I kind of attempt to close the session today. Mm, 19. Yes, there are no more questions, so I will use next 5 minutes to conclude today's session. I can see that my screen is not visible. I will share it once again, please. Yeah, I hope it is clear now. So as you can see that the tau's and the SWOT matrix varies. And as I said, these matrices appear to be static two-dimensional kind of matrices. But I can introduce dynamism because the chapter name is Dynamics of Strategy. I can use dynamism in terms of my interpretation of this particular, any particular matrix or any particular concept. Now, for example, what I've done is that I have given you even a more elaborate SWOT analysis, and I have integrated SWOT and TOWs. Now, this is a kind of an innovation that I have done for you. So, and as you can see, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can elaborate this analysis with the mapping of these trends to the specific opportunities. Therefore, I can be more explicit in terms of my strategic strategy formulation, right? So, which particular strengths, for example, match up with which particular type of opportunity, or which particular strength can thwart which type of threat, so that kind of analysis is also possible through these matrices. As I said, we will be doing more of this when we go to the chapter on corporate strategy formulation. And finally, as you can see, the strategy analysis, the chapter says, and it is a repetition of what I have been saying. It includes external analysis as well as internal analysis, and it leads to strategy identification and selection. Right? This is what I have simplified on the right panel for you. And SO strategies, WO strategies, ST strategies, WT strategies, and the max principles, and the max-min, min-max, and min-min principle, which the TOWS matrix gives to you. Now, wrapping up the whole discussion of today's session, we said that as far as the chapter is concerned, its emphasis has been on competition among the firms in the same industry. And that is where I have to do competitive landscaping. And I have to identify the strategic group which I have to focus. And then I have to look at my strategy analysis. So strategy analysis becomes different from competitive analysis because it includes competence analysis also. And I have to look at my core competencies, and I have to, where do they come from in the value chain, and also whether these are valuable, rare, non-imitable, and non-substitutable, so that they yield me a strategic advantage for superior performance. Then we saw that to the extent strategic analysis is a combination of competitive analysis and competence analysis, rather than taking these two dimensions separately, I can take these two dimensions on the same matrix, on the same page, and then I can find out, how I am doing as far as different competitive settings are concerned. We saw that precursor to the matrix analysis, because matrix is an arrangement in rows and columns. So in the rows, for example, I can look at my, or on the x-axis, I can take my strengths and weaknesses, and on the x-axis, y-axis, I can take the environmental factors. Then we also saw that a precursor to this analysis lies in the understanding of the concepts of core competence and product life cycle and the experience curve. I think we have been able to transact this chapter adequately, thoroughly. And of course, I would be very happy to take up your questions tomorrow when we move on to chapter 3, wherein we will be recapitulating all these ideas in the form of the generic framework of strategic management, which I will show again originates from the fundamental definition of strategy that we have taken as a linkage between the firm and its environment. I think on this note, we can afford to rest today's session. I would like to thank you. Vijayji, can we call the session to an end, please, here? Yeah, over.